ॐ ॐ ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। ॐ श्रीकृष्ण परमात्मने नमः। अष्टादशोऽध्यायः मोक्षसंन्यासयोगः। श्रीभगवानुवाच स्वे स्वे कर्मण्यभिरतः संसिद्धिं लभते नरः स्वकर्मनिरतः सिद्धिं यथा विन्दति तच्छृणु यतः प्रवृत्तिर्भूतानां येन सर्वमिदं ततं स्वकर्मणा तमभ्यर्च्य सिद्धिं विन्दति मानवाः। श्रेयान् स्वधर्मो विगुणः परधर्मोत्स्वनुष्ठितात् स्वभावनियतं कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम् सहजं कर्म कौन्तेय सदोषमपि न त्यजेत् सर्वारम्भा हि दोषेण धूमेनाग्निरिवावृताः असक्तबुद्धि सर्वत्र जितात्मा विगतस्पृहः नैष्कर्म्यसिद्धिं परमां सन्न्यासेनाधिगच्छति सिद्धिं प्राप्तो यथा ब्रह्मा तथाप्नोति निबोध मे समासेनैव कौन्तेय निष्ठा ज्ञानस्य या परा बुद्ध्या विशुद्धया युक्तो धृत्यात्मानं नियम्य च शब्दादीन् विषयान् त्यक्त्वा रागद्वेषौ व्युदस्य च विविक्तसेविलद्वाशी यत वाक्कायमानसः ध्यानयोगपरो नित्यं वैराग्यं समुपाश्रितः अहङ्कारं बलं दर्पं कामं क्रोधं परिग्रहं विमुच्य निर्ममः शान्तो ब्रह्मभूयाय कल्पते ब्रह्मभूतः प्रसन्नात्मा न शोचति न काङ्क्षति समः सर्वेषु भूतेषु मद्भक्तिं लभते परां भक्त्या मामभिजानाति यावान्यश्चास्मि तत्त्वतः ततो मां तत्त्वतो ज्ञात्वा विशते तदनन्तरम् सर्वकर्माण्यपि सदा कुर्वाणो मव्यपाश्रयः सर्वकर्माण्यपि सदा कुर्वाणो मव्यपाश्रयः मत्प्रसादादवाप्नोति शाश्वतं पदमव्ययम् चेतसा सर्वकर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्परः बुद्धियोगमुपाश्रित्य मच्चित्तः सततं भव मच्चित्तः सर्वदुर्गाणि मत्प्रसादात् तरिष्यसि अथ चेत्त्वम् अहङ्कारान् न श्रोष्यसि विनङ्क्ष्यसि यदहङ्कारमाश्रित्य न योत्स्य इति मन्यसे मिथ्यैष व्यवसायस्ते प्रकृतिस्त्वां नियोक्ष्यति स्वभावजेन कौन्तेय निबद्धस्वेन कर्मणा कर्तुं नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यस्य वशोऽपि तत् कर्तुं नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यस्य वशोऽपि तत् ॐ तत्सत् सर्वं श्रीकृष्णार्पणमस्तु Kindly help me. I think we completed verse 9, right?
Jai Gurudev, can we do what was done yesterday? Because yesterday it couldn't get onto the YouTube.
Yeah, okay. So we started with verse 49, I believe, no?
Yeah,
Sakta
maybe
Buddhi
you can
you
start
had.
from there.
Yeah, sure, Brahmaraj. Yeah, I request everyone to keep this our Manana session going on from tomorrow onwards. It is everybody's our Manana session. Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanam. असक्त बुद्धि सर्वत्र जितात्मा विगत स्पृहः नैष्कर्म्य सिद्धिं परमां संन्यासेनाधिगच्छति सर्वत्र everywhere asakta buddhihi the one whose mind is free from attachment jitatma the one who has self mastery vigata spruhaha the one from whom longing has gone Sannyasena by renunciation, Naishkarmya Siddhim Paramam, the most exalted accomplishment of actionlessness, Adhigachati gains, Sarvatra Asakta Buddhihi Jitatma Vigata Spruhaha Sannyasena Naishkarmya Siddhim Paramam Adhigachati the one whose mind is free from attachment everywhere, who has self mastery, and from whom longing has gone, gains the most exalted accomplishment of actionlessness by renunciation. I repeat, the one whose mind is free from attachment everywhere, who has self mastery, and from whom longing has gone, gains the most exalted accomplishment of actionlessness by renunciation. Freedom from attachment. The one whose mind has no attachment, asakta buddhi, is a karma yogi. The word sakta means attached or committed to something. Sakta. I hope I am correct. Sakta. So the asakta buddhi is the one whose buddhi, the mind, is not attached. To what is the person not attached? The asakta buddhi is not attached to likes and dislikes, raga, dveshas, which express in terms of an affinity for or aversion to some object or the result of an action. Generally, one is totally committed, dedicated really to gathering what one likes and keeping away what one does not. External objects are divided into three groups: things that I like, things I do not, and things that I am indifferent to. While the objects are external, the likes and dislikes are inside, which means that the objects of these likes and dislikes are not only outside, they are inside. Our day to day activities are totally dedicated to fulfilling these ragas and dveshas. Is there any exception to this? There is nothing wrong with this either. The problem comes only when there is an intense reaction if they are not fulfilled, which is often the case. The person is so committed to the fulfillment of these likes and dislikes that non-fulfillment generates a lot of frustration, depression, sorrow, and so on. What does this mean to be not attached in this way? That is to be an asakta buddhi. This is not detachment, but a thing that is to be understood well. Karma yoga is such a sensitive thing. It is very subtle because it is an attitude more than anything else. And therefore, it is really only understanding. The more you understand, the easier it is to have the attitude of a karma yogi. What does it mean to be an asakta buddhi with reference to likes and dislikes? Shankara will only say that it is freedom from attachment without really explaining what that is or where the attachment is. But we understand from all that has been said that it is freedom from an attachment to the fulfillment of likes and dislikes. This is the sameness of mind that defines Karma Yoga, Samatvam Yoga Uchyate. Chapter 2, 45, I believe, 48. योग्यस्य कुरु कर्माणि क्षम्यतां योगस्थः कुरु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्ध्य सिद्ध्यो समो भूत्वा समत्वं योग उच्यते. Perform action, O Dhananjaya, abandoning attachment, being steadfast in yoga and balanced in success and failure. Evenness of mind is called yoga. A karma yogi enjoys more or less a sameness of mind, in that neither is there an exhilaration when something desirable is accomplished, nor a depression or frustration if something is not accomplished. Since he has freedom from attachment with reference to accomplishment, likes and dislikes are not so important that they will cause him to go against what is right and wrong. On the other hand, they are in keeping with right and wrong. What is not to be done, he does not like, and what is to be done, he likes. As long as what is right and wrong is kept in view in the choices you make to accomplish what you want, there is no problem whatsoever. There are hundreds of means of accomplishing various ends, but your options are only within the range of dharma. In choosing an action, you go by dharma. When you have a mind that does not give you so much pressure from likes and dislikes that you are constrained to choose a means which is not fair, you are an asakta buddhi. I repeat, when you have a mind that does not give you so much pressure from likes and dislikes that you are constrained to choose a means which is not fair, you are an asakta buddhi. And when the result comes, you accept it gracefully. Whether the karma phala, the result of your actions, is in keeping with your expectation, or more than, or less than, or opposite to what you expected, you are ready to accept it gladly. The likes and dislikes do not rule. Now you understand what detachment is. It is not a word that can be used glibly because it is full of meaning. The one who has the mind described here is an asakta buddhi. This freedom from attachment extends to everything. And thus, Bhagavan says that this person has freedom from attachment everywhere, sarvatra. Shankara gives son, spouse, etc. as examples of some of the things that can be objects of an excessive attachment. A person who has this type of freedom with reference to son or daughter, wife or husband has freedom everywhere, sarvatra. So that was about asakta buddhi, detachment from beginning with our own circle and then to apply it everywhere. When it is okay, Bhagwan is so compassionate. He is saying it is okay to follow raga, dvesha, but keeping in mind when the result is there, not to react, but to respond with the right attitude. Following the life of Karma Yoga with samatvam, whether it is success or failure, whatever comes on our way, our attitude, that vichara, that should remain equal. We should not get carried away if the results are favorite or favorable as per our expectation, or not favorable, or even opposite. But still, that sameness is asakta buddhi. Yeah, kindly share your understanding, please. Very important. Should I read further? I'll read further, I believe. Yeah. So first is asakta buddhi. Now second word is mastery over oneself. In other words, he is a jitatma, one who has mastery over himself. He has gained this mastery through living a life of karma yoga, keeping the raga dveshas, likes and dislikes under check. He allows dharma to rule his life and not raga dveshas, and thus has mastered his mind. When the pressure of likes and dislikes is no longer there, what what kind of a mind will he have? One that is not a problem, a life of proper attitude, a prayerful attitude, accounts for this mastery of the mind, in that he does not come under its spell. If there was any problem, it has been taken care of. Second is Jitatma. He follows a life of dharma, not if he follows his own raga dveshas. Of course, what he does is according to dharma with the prayerful attitude. So that is Shamadama, I think, mastery over the self. He becomes a Jitatma. Freedom from longing. Then again, being one who has self mastery, being a Jitatma, naturally he is one who is released from longing for various things. Vigata spruha. To understand what this longing is, just observe some of the youngsters that you see moving about in groups with bandanas on their heads, chains on their necks, no buttons on their shirts, looking for varieties of things, roaming from place to place with their tongues hanging out. This is called longing, the young and the restless. While it is very visible in a youngster, it does not necessarily go when you grow up physically. Though you cannot do those things anymore because of a certain etiquette and an image that you want to represent, Kshamata, though you cannot do those things anymore because of a certain etiquette and an image that you want to present, the longing for them still remains. You have become an adult physically, but inside you are the same restless adolescent. That is what we call longing. Giving up things does not always mean that the pressure to have those things is gone. Sometimes they are given up because they cannot be fulfilled. You compromise and reconcile yourself to the fact that you cannot accomplish what you want. But the freedom from longing that we are talking about here does not involve that kind of giving up. Here, there is a certain understanding about oneself and the nature of one's own pursuits. This cognitive appreciation of the limitations of all the various pursuits can bring about a certain dispassion, vairagya, which is a mature, objective way of looking at things. When you can be objective, the longing is gone and you are vigata spriha. These characteristics, that is being an asakta buddhi, sarvatra, ajitatma, avigata spruha, are all the outcome of karma yoga. A person who enjoys them gains the accomplishment of freedom from action. Naishkarmya siddhi. Please note that it is not by giving up karma, but by doing karma with the proper attitude, he eventually gains Naishkarmya Siddhi. The Karma Yoga itself does not give him Naishkarmya Siddhi, freedom from action, but it equips him with a vehicle with which one can gain Naishkarmya Siddhi. Once he has the vehicle for it, he must necessarily know the Atma. Since there is no longer any hindrance for him, he discovers himself to be exactly as what is unfolded by the teacher as it is taught. The vision of the teaching is non separate from himself. Such a person being taught gains Naishkarmya Siddhi. Uh, just let me know if in between you want me to repeat or stop for Manana. What is Naishkarmya Siddhi? What is Naishkarmya Siddhi? Shankara says that the one who has this is the one from whom all karmas have gone. There is no karma at all for him. How? Because of clear knowledge of himself as the actionless Brahman. Atma, that is Brahman, is not subject to any kind of change. It is always the same. When a person comes to know that Atma is Brahman, which is free from all action, he discovers that there is no action in the self. And naturally, all karmas go away from him. All Vaidika, religious, and Laukika, secular karmas that he was doing, past actions, present actions, and future actions have all gone away in the wake of the knowledge that Atma is Brahman, which is free from all activities. It never performs any action at any time. The one who knows that is called nish, nishkarma, and his disposition or status is naishkarmya, actionlessness. This is an accomplishment, siddhi, because it makes you totally free. Thus, the accomplishment of actionlessness is called naishkarmya siddhi. Shankara gives a second meaning. Just a minute. I need to switch on. I forgot. Just a minute. Battery. Kshamedan. Yeah. I repeat, what is Naishkarma Siddhi? Shankara says that the one who has this is the one from whom all karmas have gone. There is no karma at all for him. How? Because of clear knowledge of himself as the actionless Brahman. Atma, that is Brahman, is not subject to any kind of change. It is always the same. When a person comes to know that Atma is Brahman, which is free from all action, he discovers that there is no action in the self. And naturally, all karmas go away from him. All Vaidika, religious, and Laukika, secular karmas that he was doing, past actions, present actions, and future actions have all gone away in the wake of the knowledge that Atma is Brahman, which is free from all activities. It never performs any action at any time. The one who knows that is called Nishkarma, and his disposition or status is Naishkarmya, actionlessness. The one who knows that is called Nishkarma, and his disposition or status is Naishkarmya, actionlessness. This is an accomplishment, Siddhi, because it makes you totally free. Thus, the accomplishment of actionlessness is called Naishkarmya Siddhi. Shankara gives a second meaning for Naishkarmya Siddhi. as the state of actionlessness, which is called moksha. Either way, it is the same. This Naishkarmya Siddhi is the most exalted Paramam. Why? An accomplishment like heaven, etc., or any locally gained power, name, etc., that is born of good karma still leaves the jiva a beggar. He remains a constant beggar of the crumbs of happiness that fall to him by chance, which is not much of an accomplishment. Naishkarmya Siddhi, however, is the treasure of your own fullness, and nobody can take it away from you. It is entirely opposed to any accomplishment born of any type of activity, for it is in the form of freedom right now, not later, a freedom that is not centered on anything else except yourself. Therefore, it does not depend upon any other factor. To be free, to be free, you require only your known self. If you know yourself, you are free. If not, you are bound, and no accomplishment, however exalted, can alter that. I repeat, therefore, it does not depend upon any other factor. To be free, you require only your known self. If you know yourself, you are free. If not, you are bound, and no accomplishment, however exalted, can alter that. What is the use of the bound person who does not know the Atma, adding embellishments to himself? It is something like a person who has already concluded that he or she is not good looking, trying to improve his or her looks by various means. What is the use? The person cannot cover the knowledge that he or she is not good looking. But when one accepts the fact about one's looks, one is free. And if you are free and you know that you are free, nothing can deny you that freedom. Nobody else can make you free, nor is your freedom dependent upon anything. It depends entirely upon you, not your mind or body or anything else, but just you. True independence can never be centered on anything other than yourself. And if the self is already free, only then can you be free. If freedom is intrinsic to Atma, once you know, nobody can take away that freedom. How does one gain this Naishkarmya Siddhi? How do you gain that freedom? Bhagavan says that it is by renunciation, sannyasena. Since we have seen that total actionlessness cannot be accomplished except by knowledge, Shankara equates sannyasa with clear vision of the Atma. Sannyasa here is renunciation of all karmas, sarva karma sannyasa, which is identical with knowledge. Because Atma is always free from all karma, knowing that you become free from all karma. Therefore, the state of actionlessness, Naishkarmya, should not be construed as simple vegetating without doing any action. It is purely in the form of knowledge. Knowing what I am is what is called Naishkarmya Siddhi. To understand the meaning of sannyasa here, Shankara reminds us of the verses he quoted earlier. By knowledge, giving up all action, neither doing nor causing anyone to do. Svakarmani manasa sannyasa. That is also from the chapter 5th, 13. सर्वकर्माणि मनसा सन्न्यस्यास्ते सुखं वशी नवद्वारे पुरे देहि नैव कुर्वन्न कारयन्. Mentally renouncing all actions and fully self-controlled, the embodied one rests happily in the city of 9 gates, neither acting nor causing others, body and senses, to act. He does not give up any karma except by the knowledge that he performs no action. Doing, he can say that he does not do. Talking, he can say he does not talk. But you may object, Bhagwan, you may object. Bhagwan has just recited so many verses here. How can he say he does not talk? To understand this, you must understand his vision of I. There is a story about Krishna that illustrates this very well. Standing on the bank of the river Yamuna, Krishna was being admonished by the gopis for having too many wives. He listened to this for some time and then told them to cross the Yamuna and feed one Swami who was living on the other side and had not eaten for many days. When they set out, the river was dry. But as they approached it to cross over with the food they had prepared for the Swami, there was a flash flood and the river was suddenly in spat. So they went back to Krishna, complaining that the river was impossible to cross, even in a boat. Krishna smiled and asked them to go back to the river and say, Yamuna, please subside if Krishna is a brahmachari. They all giggled hysterically and reluctantly went back to the Yamuna. Then, with great difficulty, because they were sure this was against the truth, they repeated Krishna's words. Immediately, the Yamuna subsided and there was sand everywhere. They were astonished. Crossing the river and reaching the other side, they found the Swami and gave all their food to him. Plateful after plateful, he ate, leaving only the empty vessels. When he had finished, the gopis returned to the Yamuna only to find it once again in spat. Since Krishna was not there to help them this time, they went back to the Swami. After listening to their problem, he smiled and told them to go back to the Yamuna and say, Yamuna, if the Swami had never eaten in his life, please subside. Again they giggled and half-heartedly approached the Yamuna. No sooner had they spoken the Swami's words, the Yamuna subsided. What does this reveal? What Krishna knows, the Swami knows. Krishna knows that he never performed any action. He is neither married nor a bachelor, neither man nor woman, neither old nor young, but the actionless Brahman. The Swami knows the same thing. Through this story is highlighted the following statements of the Gita. Even doing he does not do. Kurvanapi na karoti. And neither doing nor causing to do. Naiva kurvan na karayan. obtaining in this physical body as though enclosed by this body, while the body is moving, while the mind is thinking, and everything is active, he performs no action. All these activities are blessed by the presence of Atma, which itself performs no action. That is indeed I. There is no other I anywhere. The one who recognizes this gains the most exalted accomplishment of actionlessness, Naishkarmya Siddhim Paramam Adhigachati. So that was the previous verse, that through Naishkarmya Siddhi, he gets that Param. Beautiful roadmap Bhagwan has given through Naishkarmya Siddhi, becoming Asakta Buddhi, Jitatma, and Vigata Spruha. So, doing one's karma with the prayerful attitude and taking or accepting whatever result with the Prashad Buddhi. Our life becomes Nishkarma. Yeah, if you want me to repeat or if you want to share, I think I'll just read the introduction to the next verse.
Yeah, Jai Gurudev. Having asakta buddhi itself is not nishkarma. It it creates the ground for this knowledge to happen. Living a life of karma yoga itself is not going to give you this naishkarmya. It's the knowledge that the Atma is none other than me and that the Atma is actionless. That gives us naishkarmya. Right? So, living a life of karma yoga creates the ground for that, prepares the mind enough.
Yes, very
So, it is karma yoga alongside pursuing knowledge that will give us, lead us to naishkarmya. This naiva kurvan nakarayan, kurvan napi nakaroti. Just like how the beautiful story of Krishna and the sage. So Krishna is neither man nor woman, neither married nor a bachelor. He is just that actionlessness, Brahman. And once that is realized, that is the state of Naishkarmya, Naishkarmya Siddhi.
Yeah, so beautiful. Dr. Renu has written, freedom is intrinsic to Atma, achieved by Naishkarya Siddhi. Yeah, so as Brahmaraji has rightly pointed out, that the knowledge is a sword which can help us to cross over this samsara. And Naishkarmya Siddhi will prepare the ground for us, and through knowledge, we achieve that Asakta Buddhi. We become Jitatma and Nishkarma Yogi. I will request Sumaji to take
What
over
is the
since
Yeah, I'll take over. What is the meaning of Jitatma?
the one who has control over his senses, that Dhamma
Ah,
aspect, I believe.
thank you.
Introduction to the next verse. This is the result. Now, the next verse explains briefly the method by which one gains Naishkarmya Siddhi, which is Jnana Nishtha. Shankara introduces the verse recalling what was said before. Previously, it was said that worshipping the Lord by doing one's duty at a given time and place, a person gains the accomplishment characterized as inner maturity, swakarmana tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati manavaha. His job may be tending the cow, but done as a worship of Ishvara, it will result in the same success as any other action done with this understanding. Offering flowers to the Lord is also worship, and so is doing exactly what is to be done. Because Dharma is the Lord. When you conform to that order, recognizing it as Ishvara, you are in tune with Ishvara and your action becomes worship. What is the accomplishment, Siddhi, gained by this? By this Karma Yoga, you gain Antahkarana Shuddhi, preparedness of the mind for the knowledge spoken of here. Then again, the one who has the knowledge of what is Atma and what is Anatma, Atma Viveka Jnana, what is an agent, Karta, and what is not a Karta, in whom the knowledge of Atma as real has arisen, gains an ultimate certainty in the knowledge of the Atma, which is non dual. The order in which that happens is told briefly in the next verse. So beautifully, every point Bhagavan has taken care. Yeah, in Jitatma, we have to remember that it is not by force or by condition. Like if I get diabetes and if I leave sweets, so it is not Jitatma. I had to leave because my physical condition has become that. It happens sahaja ruped when you leave that, when you have that dhamma, that discipline, then it is, I believe, that is my understanding. Yeah, we can have Manana, very beautiful topics are covered if everyone wishes, and then we can. Sumaji, you want me to read the next shloka, dear?
Yes, please.
Yeah. सिद्धिं प्राप्तो यथा ब्रह्म तथाप्नोति निबोध मे समासेनैव कौन्तेय निष्ठा ज्ञानस्य या परा. Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, Siddhim Praptah, the one who has gained the accomplishment of Antahkarana Shuddhi. Yatha, how? Jnanasya ya para nishtha, that which is the ultimate certainty of knowledge. Brahma, Brahman, apnoti, he gains, tatha, just so, samasena eva, just in brief, मे निबोध कौन्तेय सिद्धिं प्राप्तः यथा ज्ञानस्य या परा निष्ठा ब्रह्म आप्नोति तथा समासेन एव मे निबोध.
How the one who has gained the accomplishment of Antakarna Shuddhi gains the ultimate certainty of the knowledge, that is Brahman. Learn from me in brief, O son of Kunti. Here, the accomplishment, Siddhi, is preparedness of mind, Antakarna Shuddhi. Shankara says that it is characterized by an eligibility of the body and senses for a commitment to knowledge, and that eligibility is the result of the grace earned by worshipping Ishvara through doing one's own duty. This restatement of what was said before, Swakarmana tam abhyacharcha siddhim vidanti manavaha, is for the sake of what comes later. Sarvadharman, but yeah, please read that again. Yeah.
Sarva karma tam abhyarchya. Sarvakarmana, swakarmana, kshamyatam. Swakarmana tam abhyarchya siddhim vindati manavaha. Yeah. And then the next is Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja.
What is born of the grace of Ishvara is that his mind, body, and senses do not create any disturbances in him. This is the greatest grace that you can think of. If you look into it, it amounts to looking at yourself nicely rather than looking down upon yourself. We always think we need grace for this and that, but all we really require is that the mind, body, and senses are available for us when we need them. This implies not only mental purity, antakarna shuddhi, but the cooperation of the body too. If the body falls apart, what is the use of mind having grace? You need not enjoy an especially healthy body, but then it should be available to serve the needs of your pursuit and not interfere with it. The mind must be clean and the body should be fit. Both of these require grace. What is it that the one who has gained this accomplishment, Siddhim Praptha, going to accomplish later? He gains Brahman. Brahma apnoti, in the form of certainty of knowledge. How does he gain that? What is the means whereby this karma yogi, enjoying this accomplishment of mental purity, but who nevertheless considers himself a doer, karta, gains the knowledge of Brahman? Lord Krishna says, please understand from me. Is he going to start another 17 chapters? No. He is going to explain it briefly. Samasena. All that he has said before is going to be presented in an essential form so that Arjuna can keep it in his mind and do what is to be done. Gain of Brahman is nothing but certainty of knowledge. What is that gain of Brahman? Brahma Prapti. It is nothing but knowledge of Brahman, which is the ultimate end of knowledge. Jnanasya ya para nishta. The culmination of a pursuit is its nishta. Generally, the pursuit of knowledge has no end to it. You come to know only a little more than what you knew before, even more about what you do not know. Previously, you did not know that you did not know, and now you know something about how much you do not know. Thus, there is no end to any type of knowledge except knowledge of the self, Atma, because Atma is partless. You cannot have partial knowledge of Atma and still call it knowledge. It is possible to be mistaken about Atma because it is always available, Nitya Prasiddha. But it is not possible to have partial knowledge of the real nature of Atma, it being totally free from parts. Therefore, knowledge of the Atma is the only knowledge that has culmination, Nishta. Every other knowledge is inconclusive. It has parts because the object of any knowledge necessarily has attributes, being dependent upon something else, Nitya. Any object of knowledge is nothing but attribute. There is no substantiative in the world, for everything that we call a substantiative becomes an attribute. Upon enquiry, implying another substantiative. In a clay pot, pot is only an attribute of the substantiative called clay. But even the clay is not a substantiative. It is only an attribute of the substantiative called atom. Any form is going to be reducible like this. Therefore, the formless alone can be a substantiative, and what happens to be yourself? Knowledge of yourself then is the only conclusive knowledge possible, and therefore the most exalted para. In what order you will gain that knowledge? Bhagavan is going to tell here, and thus he draws the attention of Arjuna saying, listen from me, Nibodha me. But first, Shankara has a very interesting and important bhashya here, which we will look into carefully. So that is clear, no? That knowledge of Bhagavan only has an end. Knowledge of Brahman has a nishta, culmination. None of the others have any end, because they are all dependent on Bhagavan. So when you get this knowledge of the self, that is the end, that is the culmination of knowledge. What is the nature of Jnana Nishta? Shankara has characterized the certainty of knowledge, Jnana Nishta, as where the knowledge of Brahman ends. Now the question is raised, what is the nature of this certainty of knowledge, Jnana Nishta? Shankara says that in whichever form the knowledge of Atma is, the certainty, Nishta, is in that form. So Shankara says that in whichever form the knowledge of Atma is, the certainty, Nishta, is in that form. What we are calling Jnana Nishta is not different from knowledge of Atma. The next question is, what is the nature of this knowledge of Atma? Atma Jnana. Shankara says that whatever the nature of Atma is, that is the nature of Atma Jnana. Between the knowledge of Atma and Atma, there cannot be any difference, for knowledge is always as true as the object. If one asks, what is the nature of this Atma? Shankara says that it is the form in which it was told by Bhagavan through the sentences of the Gita as well as the Upanishads and by reasoning. Here, Shankara can answer that the nature of Atma is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, but he does not because his topic is the nature of knowledge. We should also make a note that when Shankara talks of reasoning, here he means that what is said should be reasonable. What is said by the Shastra is examined and ascertained to be not against reason. If any other interpretation of Atma is proposed, he will show the fallacy in that proposal through reasoning. Is Atmajnana possible? Since Atma has no form, self-knowledge is not possible. Objection. An objection is raised here. It has been said that the knowledge is always in the form of the object of knowledge. The knowledge of a pot, for example, is going to be as good as the pot, in that when you know a pot, the knowledge you have of the pot will be in keeping with the nature of the pot. It cannot be different. If it is, you will not understand the pot as a pot. Therefore, it is well known that knowledge assumes the form of the object. But nowhere it is accepted that Atma is an object or that it has a form. The self is not an object because if it were, who would be the object? Being yourself, Atma is never an object which you can objectify. By nature, it is not subject to objectification. In that case, if it is not an object, how are you going to gain knowledge of it when knowledge is always in keeping with the object? Further, for knowledge to take place, the object of knowledge must have a form. But Atma, according to you, as pure consciousness, has no form. If Atma neither has a form nor is an object, how are you going to know it? It is not like a pot, which is both object and has a form, and therefore can be known. Even an atom has its own attribute through which you can know it because you can objectify it, not sensorially, but inferentially. It is an object of knowledge for you, the subject which is distinct from what you objectify. You are not an atom. You are objectifying an atom and it is identifiable in a given form. But what about Atma? It has no particular form, nor is it an object. How are you going to gain knowledge of that Atma? If you cannot gain knowledge of itself, where is the question of gaining jnana nishta, the certainty of that knowledge? And Ekatashi's view is that it does not have a form. Someone offers an answer here, citing the Shastra. A meditator and Upasaka says that Atma does have a form. What is that form? It is in the form of the sun, Aditya Varna. It is in the form of light, Bharupa. It is self-shining, Swayam Jyotihi. If Atma is in the form of self-shining light, he argues, it must have a form. Because fire, whose nature is light, is the first element in the sequence of creation that has form. The first element is space, Akasha. Second is air, Vayu, neither of which has a form. Next is fire, Agni, which is the first to have a form. Since Atma is said to be light, the special property of fire, why should we not consider that Atma has a form? Another Ekadashi's view. Another participant in the discussion answers that this is not true because such statements are meant only to negate the inertness, which is opposed to consciousness. They point out that Atma is not inert, Jada, and is beyond the darkness of ignorance. Tamasa parastat, tamasa parastat. The Shruti specially says this immediately after saying it is like the sun, Aditya Varna, in order to say that it is not ignorance, nor is it inert, nor does it need to be illumined by anything else. He explains that if forms like the substance and attribute are negated from Atma, he explains if forms like substance and attribute are negated from Atma, how can one can conclude that it is in the form of ignorance or darkness? It is to negate this argument that these statements are made. Besides that, form is specifically negated by very clear statements such as arupa, without form. Shankara answers, Atma can never become an object. Further, there is form only for an object that you can objectify. And there are equally unambiguous statements that say that Atma is not available for any objectification. Statements like there is nothing equivalent to its form, no one sees it with the eye, na sandrishe tishtati, rupam asya na chakshusha pashyati kashana enam. If somebody could read it properly, please. There's nothing equivalent to its form. No one sees it with the eye.
Yeah, let me read it. Na sandrishye tishtati rupam asya na chakshusha pashyati kaschana enam.
And without sound, without touch, ashabdam asprasham tell us that Atma is free from being an object of our sight, our ears, our sense of touch, or any other sense organ. From all these statements of the Shruti, we understand that Atma is not an object. Therefore, he concludes, knowledge enjoying the form of Atma is not tenable. How can there be knowledge of Atma when it is well known that any given cognition is of the form of that given object, and Atma has been repeatedly said to be without form, Nirakara? Knowledge must be in keeping with the object. If it is knowledge of a pot, it is in the form of a pot. If it is knowledge of a cloth, it is in the form of cloth. Thus, each piece of knowledge is in the form of the object. But here we are talking about an Atma that is free from form, and thus knowledge of Atma is not possible. Having argued that both Atma and the knowledge of the Atma has no form, his question is, how are you going to gain self-knowledge, Atma Jnana, leave alone Nishta of that knowledge? For Nishta, you need to contemplate upon knowledge in order to make it certain. What can you contemplate here? It is something like saying that cancer can be cured by an extract of rabbit's horn. Similarly, if you gain Atmajnana, samsara will disappear. The only problem is it is not possible. How are you going to gain Atmajnana when Atma is neither an object for you to know nor as a form for you to objectify? Once I know, I am free. But then Atma is not available for such knowledge. Therefore, there is no moksha by knowledge, and we have to look for another solution. It is pointless to talk about contemplation because to be contemplated upon, the Atma must have a form, but it is formless. Without a form, there is no cognition, vritti. And without a cognition, what are you going to contemplate upon to gain nishta? If I ask you, think of Atma, what will you think of? It has a form. If it is like a flame or like a sound, it is possible to think of. But if it has no form, what are you going to think of? Even if Atma cannot be objectified, its existence is well known. Shankara answers this in the following manner. He says, the conclusion that has been reached is not true. While it is true that Atma is not available for objectification, the presence is available. It is known to you because it is self-evident. It is present in the mind, buddhi, which has the capacity to reflect consciousness, which is Atma. The whole argument of the opponent here is of the basis of Atma not being an object, because it has no form. True, it has no form, but it exists. In spite of not being an object and having no particular attribute, still it exists. How do we know this? Like your face in a mirror. The consciousness, that is Atma, is reflected in the buddhi because it is made up of a subtle substance that has the capacity to reflect consciousness. The reflection or manifestation of consciousness in the buddhi is not separate from the consciousness that is the Atma. This is because the reflection and the Atma are one and the same. There is no reflection which is totally separate from the Vastu because the reflection is not a real entity. When you stand before a mirror, it is you that is seen, even though two entities seem to be there. Similarly, the buddhi is made up of such subtle substance that it is able to reflect or manifest this consciousness, and therefore consciousness appears reflected there. Because of the reflection of the consciousness alone, the body, mind, and senses are conscious. The I thought, aham vritti, which is the buddhi, becomes conscious because it reflects the consciousness of the self, and so too the this thought, idam vriddhi, in the mind. Then again, Because the mind is in association with the sense organs, they also become conscious. When the senses become conscious, the body becomes conscious because the sense organs, the sense of touch all over the body. Sense of touch is all over the body. Through the sense of touch, the whole body becomes aglow with consciousness. Like an iron ball becomes aglow with the brilliance of heat of fire. Atma does not need to be known to you as conscious and existent by any other means of knowledge. It is already evident. The only problem is that because consciousness, which is the nature of Atma, pervades the entire body, people think body is Atma. Because consciousness is present in this body, if you touch the body, actually it is Atma you're touching. Though the body is inert, jada, in both the hand and the touches, both the hand that touches and the hand that is touching, there is consciousness because Atma is there. You are there. There is no difference between reflection of consciousness. Abhasha, abhasha, abhasha and consciousness, chaitanya. Because there's no difference between the reflection of consciousness, abhasha and chaitanya consciousness, though the reflection, abhasha, is consciousness, while consciousness, chaitanya, is not the reflection. Therefore, in the physical body, the reflection, abhasha, there is chaitanya.
This is abhasa.
Abhasa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Abhasa.
Therefore, in the physical body, the reflection abhasa, there is chaitanya. That is the Atma. That is why Shankara says that people in general who have not inquired into the Shastra and therefore do not have any discrimination think that the physical body alone is the Atma. Without any vichara, inquiry, the body is taken to be Atma, and that is natural because the body, Deha, is conscious. It is very natural to conclude that this conscious body is me and everything else is other than myself. How can you say Atma is unknown? In fact, the body is not really taken to be Atma. It is only because of the consciousness there that I look at the body and say, this is me. What I identify myself as is nothing but the conscious being. Therefore, that consciousness, which is the Atma, is known already. Repeat this. In fact, the body is not really taken to be Atma. It is only because of the consciousness there that I took the body and said, I look at the body and say, this is me. What I identify myself as is nothing but the conscious being. What I identify myself as is nothing but the conscious being. Therefore, that consciousness, which is the Atma, is known already. The problem with taking the Atma to be the body alone is that it is going to be subject to aging, illness, and death as the body is. This conclusion is due to lack of discrimination, aviveka, aviveka, aviveka. Since Atma is already known, but wrongly, we have to do the negation of all that is not in the form of neti neti. Then, whatever remains as the innermost self, Pratyak Atma is told to be Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. That is the teaching Upatesha, wherein the cognition, the vritti, that Atma is Brahman, removes ignorance and goes away. Once the vritti has removed ignorance of the Atma, you do not need a special vritti to know Atma, for Atma is always present in any vritti. Only the Chaitanya, the consciousness that is reflected in the vritti, is called jnana. It is important to understand here that the vritti itself is not jnana. Even when we talk of what knowledge, knowledge belongs to consciousness alone, because the knowledge aspect is consciousness. The qualifying is done by a name and form, nama rupa. Therefore, every vritti has the presence of consciousness. In the knower consciousness, knowledge consciousness, known consciousness, in all the three, one consciousness alone is present. Knower consciousness, knowledge consciousness, and known consciousness. Only one consciousness alone is present. Therefore, there is no way of missing Atma at any time. Very intricate knowledge. So consciousness is Atma. And every vritti has consciousness, has Atma in it. Somebody say something. Quite a heavy piece of information, right? Heavy knowledge. I also have this doubt now after reading this, that he says, no, Atma is self-effulgent, is in the form of light. Why did they say that? If Atma has no form, then why is that said, that Atma is in the form of light and it is self-evident, self-luminous? I can get the self-luminous part, that is knowledge, but why did they say that it is in the form of light? So here they mean light as knowledge, is it? Not as the light of fire or the brilliance of the sun, not that light. How do you take it?
Yeah, I think we will need another reread of all of this.
Yeah.
And at one point, the whole thing is that the formless dictates the forms. When the example given was when you can break down the clay, the pot has its name and its form because of the it gets the object pot gets its the substantive is because of clay. But clay itself is not the ultimate substantive. You can further break it down to atoms. And so when you keep doing that, ultimately you get to the fact that it is the formless that is the ultimate substantive. It is the substratum of everything else. All the forms are dependent on this formless, which we call Atma, which we call Brahma. But when we look at how creation happens, the first thing to happen is space and then air. Both of these have no form. But the first thing that actually takes a shape and a form is fire. And this is why when the opponent asks, they consider Atma as Aditya Varna, as that equivalent to the sun. That is because they're objectifying it. But you cannot objectify Atma, because it is not an object of our cognition. It is the very basis of our cognition. It is because of Atma that we are able to even think. That is why that knower, known, and the very
Knowledge.
means of knowing, knowledge, all of that merges. And that is the Naishkarmya. There's no action there. There's nothing happening. It's just there. That is it. Just being. And I don't know the exact answer to your question as to why knowledge is Atma is given the thing as light. I think knowledge is akin to light, because when you
Yeah.
your tamas, when you look at tamas is darkness, is ignorance. The opposite of that is knowledge, which is light. I think in that context it is mentioned as light, but not in the form of having a form,
Yeah.
like fire. It is not that. I think the implied meaning there is that it is knowledge. Knowledge is
That's what
that
even I thought.
yeah, like
So therefore, you can say it is self-luminous. That's also I can
yes,
understand.
yes. It is
Yeah.
self-luminous. It does not need another light to light it up.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
see, for any other object, you require some other light to make it visible. Whereas Atma is self-luminous. It is self-effulgent. Swayam Prakashaha. It is.
So that is why our mind thinks of this brilliance of the sun and all when we think of Atma, I think. Because the mind is so used to form an object.
Correct. But that is why Shankara says, with reason. With reason, you have to negate all of this. Which is why he is bringing up, he is himself being the opponent, and he is giving the counter argument. So, because in our journey as a sadhak, we might get all these doubts. And in order to get this jnana nishtha, this certainty of knowledge without any doubt, without even a shade of doubt, in order for it to be so certain, all these little doubts have to be thrashed. And that is thrashed by the sword of vichara, of reasoning. Which is why this whole reading is so important. I think we'll do another repeat. Oh, I think we've gone beyond time.
Yeah. I'll play.
We
You
can
can do
come
the.
here.
Yeah.
Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
निरुपमनित्यनिरंशकेऽप्यखण्डे मयि चिति सर्वविकल्पनादिशून्ये घटयति जगदीश जीवभेदम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया श्रुतिशतनिगमान्तशोधकानपि अहधनादिनिदर्शनेन सद्यः कलुषयति चतुष्पदाद्यभिन्ना न घटितघटना पडीयसी माया सुखचिदखण्डविबोधमद्वितीयम् वियदनलादिविनिर्मित्ते नियोज्य भ्रमयति भवसागरे नितान्तम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया अपगतगुणवर्णजातिभेदे सुखचितिविप्रविडाद्यहङ्कृतिं च स्फुटयति सुतदारकेहमोहम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया विधिहरिहरविभेदमप्यखण्डे बत विरचय्य बुधानपि प्रकामम् भ्रमयति हरिहरविभेदभावान् घटितघटना पडीयसी माया त्वघटितघटना पडीयसी माया